That's a nice song. Got any more?
Yeah. Hearts.
Hello, so today I just want to share a story that we read last night in our family Bible time. We're reading through the book of Matthew, and this, just one of the verses kind of spoke to me because I could see myself in the story. So it was the story of Jesus walking on the water, and then Peter walks on the water as well. But this verse 30 of Matthew chapter 14 says, "But when he," Peter, "saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, 'Lord, save me.'" So Jesus went up in a mountain to pray, to have some quiet time with God, and it says he constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side. So Jesus told them to go on the boat and go to the other side. But now when they were going across the lake, it says the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary, which means the wind was against them. And then during the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea, and when the disciples saw it, they were terrified and thought that it was a ghost. But straightway Jesus spake unto them and said, "Be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid." And then Peter said, "If it is you, then tell me to come to you on the water." And so Jesus said, "Come." So Peter jumped out of the boat, and it says he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried, saying, "Lord, save me." So anything that God tells us to do can be very hard. So like any job God gives us to do can be as daunting as walking on the water. So walking on the water was hard at the best of times. Like even if there was no storm, it's still an impossible thing to walk on water. But with God, there is no impossible. I have this little ornament that somebody gave me. And it says, "Believe. Miracles happen each and every day because with God, all things are possible." So it's nothing for Jesus to walk on water or to help Peter to walk on water. And it's nothing for God to help us do things that to us feel impossible. So anything God gives us to do may feel really daunting. And that's even on the best of times. But then, he sees the wind, which I think is funny. It says he sees the wind because you can't really see the wind, but I guess it means he sees what the wind's doing. He's seen the storm, and that makes him afraid. And so he starts to sink. So when he's focused on Jesus, when he's trusting in Jesus, then he is able to walk on the water. But then the wind and the waves, that all distracts him, and he gets afraid, and then he sinks. But even when he sinks, he cries out to God, and straight away Jesus reaches forth his hand and saves him. And so sometimes we may be doing something, or we're going to do something that God puts on our heart to do, and it's difficult, and there are things that can make us get afraid. So at the best of times, it's hard to obey God and to do what he's commanded us to do, but then there are other things that come up as well that make it even more difficult. And those things, when we look at those things, they can be circumstances or just things that happen that can make us afraid, and then we start to sink. We're not trusting God anymore. And so the reason this spoke to me was there is something I'm planning to do. It's kind of a new opportunity that I have since I'm not working as a teacher aide anymore. And it's something I looked into back at the end of last year, but then it was Christmas time and the school holidays. And so now that the kids are back at school, it's something I need to kind of start doing, but it's something I can't do at home. It's something I have to go away to do it. And I find it hard to do things like that I can't do at home as a mum, because if one of my children is sick, then I can't do things outside of home. And last year, Esther was sick a lot and had a lot of days of just being tired. And this year, it's kind of seems like it's going to be a bit the same again. So on Waitangi Day, she was feeling really tired and laying down all day. And I just started to, plan to do this thing. And then she was laying down all day, and then it puts me off doing anything outside of the home. And so then I started to pray about it, and because I really enjoy just being at home, it's like, oh, I'd like to just, be at home more and not do anything. This thing, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's an opportunity to teach the Bible. And it's kind of a little bit scary. I find it a little bit scary, but then I see things like what Peter saw. I see things like Esther not feeling well, and then I think, well, I don't want to commit to anything, because what if I commit to it and then she's sick and then I can't do it? And so then I get afraid. Or like last week, I did some wood splitting with my husband, and then I woke up the next day with a sore neck. So I think I must have lifted something too heavy and it made my neck really sore. And it's actually pretty good today, but kind of every day I've had problems with it. And so then when you're in pain, then you think, oh, I can't do anything like that. And so, then I get afraid, and I think I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to commit to it because I get afraid that I'll commit to it and then not be able to do it. But if God has given us a job to do, then he will help us. And when these things come up that make us afraid, then we need to put our trust in God, and we need to remember that it is him who tells us to do these things, and we need to trust in him. So yesterday, Esther did have a doctor's appointment, and we did blood test, and we got some supplements from the doctor. He thinks it's just still from pneumonia or COVID or something like that. So we're doing our best to keep on top of her health, but I have to trust God that if he gives me a job to do, he'll also help me to do it too. So I just found that helpful. Like walking on water is difficult at the best of times, and the things God gives us to do is difficult even when everything's going well. Like I taught the Bible at school this morning, and some days it can be really difficult. Sometimes the children can be difficult, although this year it's been pretty good so far. But even when everything goes really well, it's still a difficult thing to do. I never feel like I know the stories well enough, or that I understand them well enough, or comprehend them well enough, and it's just difficult. And then other things can pop up, like children being difficult, or one of my children being sick, or if I'm not feeling very well, and that makes it even more harder. But then we need to trust in God to help us. And I think it's always difficult to trust God. There's always things that make it difficult to trust God. And this morning I taught the story of the 4 friends who brought the paralyzed man to Jesus down through the roof. They had faith in Jesus, and they brought this man. They tried to bring him to Jesus, and there were obstacles in the way. There were people in the way, and so it was difficult for them. Their faith was tested, but they didn't just give up. They kept going, and Jesus saw their faith. And so it will always be difficult to trust in God, but we need to keep our eyes on Jesus and not give up, and Jesus will help us. And when Peter did sink, Jesus helped him straight away, because Jesus was right there with him. So even if things don't go so well, we don't need to be afraid, because God is right there and he will help us. It says when they came into the boat, the wind stopped. So then it says, then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth thou art the Son of God. But the wind was in God's hands, and all the things that happen that make us afraid, they are in God's hands, and we need to trust that. And one more thing from the story of Moses. I've been thinking a little bit about the story of Moses this week. He was called to do a difficult job, and I listened to a man talking about it, and I'm going to share what he said, but this is kind of like this is like the preacher's paraphrase. So God told Moses to go and bring the Israelites out of Egypt, and Moses said, who am I? Or I'm a nobody. And God's answer was, I know, but I'll go with you. And then Moses said, but I don't know what to say. And God's answer was, I'll tell you what to say. And then Moses said, but they won't listen, or they won't believe me. And God's answer was, that's my job. And then Moses said, but I can't talk well. And God said, who made your mouth? And then after all that, Moses said, send somebody else. And God said no, which I never really thought about it before, because God did send Aaron as well, but Moses still had to go. So that encouraged me too. So especially for this new job God has given me to do, I don't need to be somebody. If God's with me, that's all I need. God will tell me what to say. It is God's job to make people listen or to believe what we say, and it is God who made my mouth, even though I can't talk very well, and God is not going to send somebody else. God wants me to do it. So I hope I hope that's an encouragement for you to do whatever God has given you to do, to trust in Him, and He will help you.